Hello and welcome to another episode of a Bazaar podcast. As per usual, you can find us on either YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or via RSS feed for your podcast listening app of choice. Today, you'll be joined by me, MetallFenix, and finally, the long-awaited return of Sixten.
Yes, I'm finally back. I have missed the podcast so much, so I'm super excited to talk about things today and for the foreseeable future as well.
We also have, of course, Walter.
Hello.
And finally, returning guest, and of course, man of the hour, the official first place winner with the only flawless submission of 3-10-0 runs in the inaugural Bazaar Community Tournament hosted by Tempo Storm. We are joined by Snazer. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello. Welcome, everyone. I'm Max, aka Snazer. I have been a recurring guest here in this podcast and have been like a long-time streamer and part of the community, and I'm very happy to be here again.
Yeah, and I don't think we necessarily need to bury the lead. We actually, before this episode, we had some discussion on with the 1 week extension to the season. Very understandable. I'm sure there is just a lot of testing to be done in a short time frame before season 5, which we are all very excited for. We have debated maybe just skipping a week. We weren't quite sure what to talk about. And then, like a curveball, they hit us with the first ever official Bazaar tournament hosted by Tempo, which, of course, how could we not cover that? Especially when we have the first place winner right here. So I can start off, in case anyone hasn't heard about this, Tempo actually hosted an official tournament, so a competitive event for the Bazaar. And in this particular one, they went with what they consider to be the simplest format. The community posts did state that there are more advanced formats that they could host tournaments in that would have stricter regulations or more control, and I'm sure they are working on things behind the scenes in terms of facilitating even more and better competitive events. But they went for the simplest one in order to encourage anyone in the community who is interested to host their own tournament as well. And as such, the format was very simple. You boot up a ranked run. The time that the tournament ran for was 4 hours, and within this 4 hour span, you could play as many runs as you wanted, but you could only submit 3 of those runs as your kind of score for the tournament, and then those 3 runs would be your final score. And the only thing you had to do was, if you got they started off with 7, 8, 9, or 10, and then eventually I think they made it only 10 win runs. You'd have to get in a Discord call with a moderator and show the end game screen to prove that you really did play that game live within the time frame. They mentioned that they have more advanced tech in order to be able to verify directly against the database which runs were played and how many wins you got, and that would theoretically make it so that you can only play the 3 runs or what have you. But they wanted to make this simple and easy to replicate, which that it would definitely be. And I think the turnout was a lot. I think that's why they reduced the requirement to only needing to show proof with 10 wins, because so many people showed up that at some point it was basically you needed 3 10 wins to at least place within like the top 10 or 20 or wherever they had the cutoff. And then the tiebreakers ended up coming down to how much prestige you'd lost throughout the 3 runs combined. which is why Snazer took home the first place, as he had 3 submitted flawless 10-0 runs. Did I miss anything?
We could also mention that Walter placed in the top 10 as well.
Yes, Walter
Highest,
was
gonna
a shared 7th place. I have the leaderboards here. I'll put them up. You are second, lol, in client.
Yeah,
right, Walter?
I'm tied for 7th.
Yeah, tied for 7th.
And I was with, so I had 48 prestige total. So 2 perfects and then 1 where I had 8 prestige.
There you go. Yeah, so it just goes to show how cutthroat the cutoff must have been for the really high placements. But of course, as we can see there, right at number 1, Snazer. Unfortunately, I was preoccupied yesterday, which is when the tournament took place, so I did not participate myself. But I hear that you guys have had quite positive impressions of getting to do an actual competitive event in the Bazaar. So, I mean, we can start with Snazer. You're the man of honor and the guest. Why don't you tell us a bit? What was it like?
Yeah, so I mean that was like a really short notice on the tournament. It was
Mhm.
just announced a day previous, but I thought it was like a pretty nice like idea just to get it running. Like this idea of having like sort of a competitive scene, at least like tournaments, events. So I was like really happy, and I also decided for that reason to stream that. Like I haven't been like too much into streaming lately, but I wanted like to show and hype up the event myself a little bit further. So I also streamed it. So that was pretty cool. The format was rather simple, and yeah, my idea was just to grind as many games. Dooley has not changed much in the last 2 months, so I had like a lot of practice from basically playing daily the same kind of Dooley runs, and decided to give it a shot, and got a little bit lucky there. Had like I think a few fortunate runs that I got away with. But also to be fair, like I played really fast, and I played eight games in total. So that has to be put onto notice. Like I brute forced a little bit the issue there in the given time window. 7 were like 10 wins overall, but obviously only 3 perfect, which gave me the win. I want to point out that like Classy was very close. Like they had like 59 prestige, so only one run where they lost day 1 to an enchanted item very close was like sort of the difference there. So shout out there to Classy as well. And yeah, I think it was like a really fun event. I'm very happy that many people like participated. I think also like the prize pool itself was very generous. So everyone who had like 310 wins was or will be given like 5,000 gems. That's like in my book quite a hefty price for like winning or partaking. Because that will be like 80 people overall that will kind of win that prize. So
Do you
yeah, it
happen
was
to know if Classy was playing Dooley as well?
Yes. They
Okay.
even streamed. I watched a little bit into the VOD. That was like I think 3 weaponized core games if I remember correctly, with a lot of Uzis.
What about
Yeah.
yourself? Have you also been kind of favoring any particular core or playstyle on Dooley? And did you do anything particularly noteworthy that was different for the tournament compared to how you would approach just normally playing on the ladder?
Very slightly. I still went with what I feel most comfortable with, which is like still the ignition core. So I played like my I would say like kind of signature, because I know that a lot of people would favor in those positions often the weaponized core. I had like a few trained games where I had the skill trained. Whenever you slow, your weapons gain like 5 damage.
Yeah.
And it was still like not an indicator for me to go for weaponized core, because I feel if you have a very strong game, and you need to have a strong game to get like a perfect run, the ignition core has a little bit of an upside that he has like 2 benefits, and that is like, or like 1 benefit. If you have like healing life regen boards, the burn can actually eat through that, whereas like a weaponized core cannot eat through that, because he gets like out-healed. As long as he does not one shot, he will fall short. Other than that, I mean, I played enchanted items. That's like standard approach these days at the moment. The only thing that I made different is I played a little bit more aggressive to win every day in the last few runs that mattered, which means like I would have been a little bit more, saving money and not buying the golden chocolate. But here I bought the golden chocolate. I bought like items like 1 or 2 days that I would normally just not buy, because I think on average it is better to save money and wait for the drill instead of buying a armadillo. But obviously, if it's about prestige and not even losing a single day, I think you have to be like more aggressive and take every like little bit of extra, like not value, like strength you can get each day, just to like try to get away with a win. But other than that, it was just I got a little bit lucky on the skills and starts and matchups.
Yeah, I definitely think it is interesting, those small differences that a tournament setting will have, even in this obviously simplest scenario where the runs are still just played on the regular ladder. I think if we ever get some kind of lobby format or anything like that, it would probably shift things even further. I know we've sometimes kind of played around with the idea of a more almost endurance mode where you just have a bunch of players, and then whenever someone runs out of prestige, they get kind of eliminated from the pool, and then you have it narrow more and more as you get towards the top. Could also be really fun, but most likely anything like that, they need time, dev time, especially with such a small team, to implement the tech required to have like almost a separate queue or mode. But I'm very excited more than anything. I feel like this is a clear message by Tempo Storm that they care about and want to foster the competitive side of the game as well, which I think is just gonna long term be really good for having more things to do and to engage with, and for people to get to care about really with the game more broadly. But Walter, you also participated in the tournament, and you did not play the kind of most expected consistency pick for this current meta. Dually, I believe you played Pygmalion.
Yeah, and I also didn't stream myself. Goose commentated on my games while streaming my games on his channel. So I was streaming my games to him through Discord, and then he had my point of view on the screen, and I couldn't hear him, but he was commentating on my games like the way you would like a play-by-play commentator, and like giving the reasoning behind, or at least, his version of the reasoning of why I was doing what I was doing. um, but no, actually, honestly, he did an amazing job. He's very complimentary. He made me seem smart and like a really good player, better than I really am. And so I do want to thank him for that, because he did an amazing job. And if you're interested in watching the run, it's on his YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So I guess I should plug that. I mean, he commentated my runs. He was so nice. It was such a nice thing to do. And yeah, it was super fun. It was the most fun I've had playing the Bazaar the entire time I played it. I think I it reminded me of like playing in Magic tournaments back in the day, like when when that was different than what it is now. But like without getting into that, like whatever, I played Pig. It was like the first run was such a disaster. Like I conceded the first run. I was like, oh, I'm going to embarrass myself. Like I was inside my own head. And then I got a very smooth Silk perfect game, and then I played a extreme struggle bus. Like, I mean, it ended up being just like sharp corners, wrist warrior stuff at the end. But like the path there it was a real uphill climb. That was the one that was the 8 prestige finish. So it's like I was still winning a lot of rounds, even though these runs. I mean, the first Silk run was very smooth, and then the next game was the second Silk perfect is like just one of the for a perfect game. Most times when you play a game that ends up being a perfect game, it's like it's perfect because you find a good line early and you just never let it go. But this was the most weird roundabout Silk game. I don't think I had it was a game where I had I want to say I had force field, spiky shield, and claw, and no Silk. It was just so bizarre. It was just a cool game. It ended up being a perfect. I was really proud of my play in that game. And then so I was in the situation with I had about an hour left in the tournament where I had 2 perfects and 1 8 win. And so I decided to start another run. I took a loss, and at the time I knew that the only information I had at the time, Snazer, was that you had 2 perfects and a 15. I think at the time. So I took a loss on day 4. So I was thinking like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to win if I just don't take one more loss, right?" But even if like you get a perfect, I can still get Arkin's ring. So I was playing like the whole game for Arkin's ring, like, and then I mean it ended up not mattering. Like I took a really close loss to a Vanessa on day 9 and was effectively eliminated. Like I would need like 3 Arkin's rings or whatever, like astronomically unlikely thing that wasn't gonna happen. So but still, and like it was still just so fun. So I ended up playing 5 games total, 1 concede, 4 10 wins, but the best 3 were the 2 perfects and the 8. So overall, like, and I still think that like I'm really proud of my performance. I think on Pig, getting perfect victories is very difficult. And it's not like you don't have a natural line in the game aside from like enchanted matchbox start or some kind of, and yeah, and I should say like I played income start. I played no enchanted item. I played income start. So there's no lines in the game for Pig that like have no weak points. Like the games that I had perfects, there were days where I was weak and I faced weak opponents on my weekdays and won. Like so I got lucky to win those perfect games. I think getting 3 perfects on Pig in 4 hours is so hard. So I'm still super proud of my performance. Like top 10 is awesome. Like I'm really happy. I'm super happy about it.
Yeah, I feel like actually I want to point out I like that, for example, this tournament showed how the community interacts. Like I love the idea of you getting streamed and commentated by Goose.
Yeah.
I watched a little bit into the VOD later. And it was like just like these small things that are organically growing out of that are like kind of amazing, and I feel like showing how great this community is.
Yeah, I split my time between Snazer, Rarish, and Goose streams, but I also want to say that Goose Father made like an amazing job commentating, and if Tempo ever wants to do like an invitational, I think they should hire him for the casting job for sure. He has a natural voice for it.
Yeah, they might want to get someone who plays the other 3 heroes. too. But
No, I would like to see him commentate dually. Like I would.
yeah, just him commentating Vanessa like look card,
Yeah,
just like
for sure.
uh,
Also, an observation because since I didn't play myself, but I was still very much like in tune. I was like reading in the Dooley and Mac channels on Discord and such. And what happened is, so Snazer mentioned the second best guy, Classy. He's actually a Mac main, I think. But what a lot of the Mac mains on Discord said is that their best builds, like the quest lines, etc., are like 10-3 boards. Like they rely
Yeah,
on
yeah.
in the early game, you like play a weaker board to get a stronger item later. So they just had to switch to a different hero basically to compete, like either enchanted item start pig or dually, which is like interesting, right? Like that shows kind of the flaws of a prestige tiebreaker system where some heroes just aren't built to get perfect wins every time, right? Like that's not
Honestly,
part
like,
of the core balance.
rather than a flaw, I would almost call it like the quirks of various formats, because I think it's in a way like a really interesting thing to think about, right? How I feel like this would change quite a lot if, as they mentioned, they do have the tech to, for an entirely tempo hosted tournament, they can validate the runs against the database, which means that they could say you're only allowed 3 runs, no concedes, those will be your score. Which would then make a completely different metagame, because suddenly consistency does matter a ton as well. If you're expecting less total players to have 3-10 wins, then of course that in turn means that the tiebreaker of prestige becomes less relevant. And if people are playing with that in mind, it also means that prestige is likely to be closer, because people might not be as willing to take high risk, like this is my 10-0 line type plays. And it's
yeah, it
just,
definitely
yeah,
changes how you play, knowing that you have to
right.
get a perfect to win. Definitely like changed my decisions a little bit in that final game, or
And
even
of,
knowing that I needed to win with more than 15 prestige
mm-hmm.
changed my decision. Like it makes you prioritize the
Yeah,
upcoming PvP
because
fight way more.
in previous episodes, I know especially Metal has done a really good job hammering home that every part of this game is a resource,
Yeah.
including prestige.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, with this kind of format, prestige no longer is something you can afford to waste, right? So that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of takes away something, which in turn changes everything when one resource is suddenly different. But I
But
also agree that in a way, like of course, in this particular kind of hyper-focused meta, Dooley seemed and Pygmalion to a lesser extent are like the clear favorites. But of course, with different balance changes or with more time playing this format, perhaps like skill start Mac all of a sudden it's like a really strong 10-0 strategy.
yeah, and I
Like things
remember
people just
like
didn't know. Gone.
when
Yeah.
Mac came out, Walter was having a bunch of like 10-0 success with Potion Mac, like just Tempo Potion Mac.
Yeah.
Not to mention, of course, Vanessa, when she's strong, is really good at 10-0.
There's like also the idea in the future, like there are like many more tournaments coming and having like hero specific tournaments. So then it's also kind of, a little
That's
bit of a
very
Or
different
having
true,
a
game.
yeah.
tournament where you have to play you have to play your runs on 3 different
Oh,
heroes.
you
Like
have to
same
play,
format, but you have to
yeah.
submit 3 runs but on 3 different heroes, any 3 you
And I
want.
really
Like
like that. That's very cool.
Let's face it, that's just the Rarish tournament right there. You will be competing for second place. Like
No,
that's
no,
I
just
no.
mean,
it right
Like,
now.
I'd fight
but
in
like
that.
there's so yeah, I would play it too. Like I think that that like the fact that any community member can run their own tournament means that there's
Mm-hmm.
space for that. Like certainly there's space
Yeah.
for that. Like the submit 3 10-win runs, and whoever has the most unique items on their board or whatever. I don't know what, like that was kind of something from the suggested as a tiebreaker. I don't like it so much as a tiebreaker, but like I like it if it's the main focus of the tournament that everyone is trying to do. So, like, if everyone is going in with the goal of being like, I'm gonna play 3 runs and I'm gonna have 27, like, you'd want to play a lot of small items, right?
Yeah.
So you'd try to put, I don't know, 25, 26, 27 different items on your board on 3 different boards. And like, it'd have to be like one hero or something, right? Like, you'd have
Yeah,
to
I was
restrict
gonna
it, but
say, because
that could be
Bazaar is
cool
such a
too.
unique game in so many ways, I think it's gonna take a long time before there is ever like a settlement on like what the best type of format is. So I think it's really good that they encourage like us to make our own
Mm.
tournaments, and then eventually, maybe like 2 years from now, there will be like a consensus sort of among top players, like what is the most competitive and like fair and balanced format. But until then, it's best to just like experiment and try like 20 different formats to see like
Yeah.
which one feels the most balanced and like
And one
fun for
format
everyone.
doesn't have to be best either. They
Yeah.
can just be testing for different things. Like, the format for who can play the most unique cards is like, it's just testing for something different than who
Yeah,
can
sure.
win
But I think
fastest. So, like,
eventually they would probably like there to be like, if there's like the equivalent of like a major in Bazaar, like the biggest tournament, like I'm talking like in the far
yeah,
future
I'm
here.
sure that would be like the standard format for like
Yeah, like
the
a standard
Bazaar
format is what
World
I'm thinking at.
Championships, or yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with you. The standard format should be like playing the game as to the best of your ability, for sure.
Yeah, but it's like sort of like in chess, like you have like a ton of different time systems in chess, but there's still like the classical currently still being like the most prestigious. But there's also like, okay, I'm going off topic here, but like you can have a bunch of different
Yeah,
tournament systems
many different
for
formats, and
sure.
people can be experts at one format, or one, they're better at one time control or worse at another. Like, that's really common
Yeah,
in chess.
I mean, it's a good tie-in too, because while the specific format ran this time meant that prestige wasn't a resource in the same way that it normally is, it also introduces the interesting dynamic of time being a factor in a very different way than it normally is. Like, now time is your new resource, because of course I know Snazer downplays it a little bit, saying he got lucky and he had a lot of runs. But let's be honest, fitting 8 runs, 7 of which were 10 wins in a 4 hour span, is an achievement in and of itself that definitely will quite significantly boost your odds at managing one of those 3 flawless streaks. So I think there are a lot of intricacies like that too, which definitely make even this, quote unquote, most basic format interesting to think about
yeah,
and to watch.
because they also actually mentioned that one of the proposed earlier like tiebreakers was that whoever gets it, like whoever gets the first, was it like 310 wins is the player who wins. Like,
Mm,
so you could also have that be the thing, like first past the like goal post or whatever.
yeah,
Like that could be one way to do it, but of course that heavily favors playing like the fastest hero, etc.,
yeah.
etc. So there's like all these kind of wrinkles and complications from everything. But I just think it's super exciting that we can talk about this finally and like theorize and discuss, because it gives us so much more. Like it makes the game more interesting for sure to have more ways to play it.
I also think I know that another one that they proposed as a tiebreaker is that if multiple people all have 10 win runs, or 3 10 win runs in this case, you can just keep playing runs until there's only one person who has X number of 10 win runs. But that, of course, they said they wanted to avoid this time because from a European time zone, the tournament ran from 8 p.m. to midnight. And of course, needing to then keep playing runs several hours past that would have been very tough for the EU crowd. But it's interesting to consider in, for example, if you have a bit more of a high stakes tournament that you really don't want to come down to just prestige min maxing, there are alternative ways such as that where you can avoid that
Yeah, you could
being
do
what
like
decides it.
sudden death, right? So like all the
Yeah,
players who submitted 10 wins play another run, and
yeah,
then like anyone who doesn't 10 win is out, and
yeah.
then it keeps going until someone.
Yeah, and you could
So there's
even
one
do it
person
over
left.
multiple days. So you like the first round
Mhm.
is on day one, and then all the people who survived go to the next day, etc., to make sure that there are no like time zone problems, or you have to dedicate 14 hours of your day to compete for first place, etc. So I agree. I think sudden death is another great solution to the tiebreaker, but it needs to be communicated properly. Like, what times do I have to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
available,
I
etc.
definitely like the two-stage format where there's like the big open timed like heat almost, and then where
Yeah.
everyone submits their run, and then like all the players who like did the tie essentially tied for first with without the tiebreaker in this case
Yeah,
submitted three
qualified
tens
basically.
qualify for like the sudden death where like you don't get to concede, you just play a run, everyone just plays a run, and if you don't 10 win you're out, like boom boom boom, and then eventually you're down to one.
And it also obviously really goes to show just how much potential there would be in even just a very limited in client tournament mode, where even if all it would do is just track the like run scores played within whatever tournament you have joined
Yeah,
in
just make sure
quotation
you were
marks.
abiding by like the basics of the
Just, yeah,
tournament
like
essentially. Yeah.
remove the need for manual verification. I would not be surprised if like a bare bones version of a system like that might be their highest priority to implement, just because it would make it even easier for anyone to host this, and also to have more liberal time slots, because if you could just input a manual constraint of these are the next 3 runs played after you maybe you queue up from the tournament lobby or whatever, you press like play ranked but in there, and those runs go in like a log. And if you've set it to this can only be 3 games, then you could say you have 3 days to play these 3 games, and pretty much
Yeah,
anyone
and
could
anyone can play
participate. Yeah.
whenever they want. Yeah, that's actually
Yeah,
super
I
smart.
also hope that they add an ability to spectate these official games, at least tempo themselves, or some ones that
Hmm.
we can see what are the top like candidates up to, who is close to losing here, who is furthest ahead, like a way for us to be able to track the tournament ourselves, so that you don't have to rely on everyone being a streamer to actually see like who is,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, that would also be great because Hearthstone kind of has that with like the spectate a friend system, which allows people to watch like top players, etc. Anyway, do we have anything else to add on the tournament
Yeah,
side
no,
of
I
things here?
think there's just a lot to look forward to be honest.
Yeah, I'm just excited for another one actually. That's my main takeaway is like I'm down for whatever format. Like I think them keeping it experimental in the beginning is good.
Yeah.
Um so I'm down for whatever format. I'm going to like and I want to play it and approach it with like the most positive, like a non-cynical way too, because I think that like people were saying at this tournament, oh, someone who's just perma re-rolling enchanted item or whatever is gonna win. Like people were kind of like a little doomer on this tournament because of maybe they some perceived flaws with the format, like that you could just concede unlimited number of runs. But like as far as I know, no streamer actually did that. No one who streamed the tournament actually did that. And then the people who did well in the tournament, as far as I know, they didn't do that either. So it's just like I think that was totally like overblown. I think that anyone who would try that probably would have had like better spent their time like getting better at the game, you know what I mean? And
Or
like
even
not
just
trying to
like
cheese the format.
getting another run in
Yeah,
realistically.
yeah.
Because I think
Yeah.
obviously having a powerful enchanted item can really help out on the first or second days. But at the end of the day, just because you win a few days, it's not necessarily going to mean that that will continue. Whereas having like, even if you're pretty quick at it, and if you don't care at all about the cost of burning through, like, because that would be the biggest irony, right? Like, if you re-roll enough, you're barely even getting anything from the prize because you've spent so much on rolling. But even if you do that, realistically, it may totally be the difference between squeezing one more or less run in the total time frame anyways. Or even if you do that for every run, you're not necessarily guaranteed to have time to do all 3 runs either. And I think more than anything, we talked about this, I believe it was on the episode with Sunny, how the thing that to me I felt the most like I kind of missed in the Bazaar was just more things to let you interact with and engage with the game other than just the ranked ladder. Because it is admittedly, unless you specifically care about trying to reach one of the highest ranks, very low stakes. There isn't really that much incentive to be like super seriously playing the ranked ladder all the time, unless again you're trying to go for like rank 1 or something. But there's such a difference in terms of like competing in the tournament means you set aside 4 hours for one weekend, whereas going for rank 1 probably means you intend to dedicate like almost full-time job type hours to this for an entire season. So I think having that middle ground of people who want something that's a bit more serious and engaging than just playing ranked ladder, but at the same time isn't as arduous and time consuming as going for high ranks. I mean, this feels like it ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what Walter mentioned, or one of you mentioned, is that in the future, if they're able to control, so we cannot just keep conceding our runs. Like in the future, we have X amount of runs we are allowed to do. We have maybe like 4 tickets to the tournament or something that we use. That would, of course, stop the cheese factor. So I think that is something that they will eventually iron out. And it's just like the consequence of this being the first scrappy version of this.
Yeah, they could add like both a time limit and a game limit, right? So they could be like your best 3 runs in 4 hours and 4 games.
Yeah.
So like you get
Anyway,
4,
I
something like that.
think we're ready to move on to the topic of the week.
Yep.
Yeah, that was pretty good spot. You can go ahead, and since you have finally returned, why don't you
Yeah,
introduce the topic
so
for
this is
us?
something I am fairly passionate about, and it relates to item perception and the danger of nerfing the fun out of the game, which is something I see very often in Bazaar communities or like just in card game communities in general, where no matter how good the meta is, no matter how like fun the game is, no matter what really, there will always be something that is catching a lot of heat. Like there is some item or some build that seemingly everyone complains about. And I think that in general, it's like a zero-sum game. You can never perfectly balance this sort of game, and that is not something we should even strive for either. I think what we should strive for is for the game to be as fun as possible, and for as many like builds as possible to be viable, and for those builds to be like different from each other. Um, and one thing I wanted to specifically discuss is that I think certain items disproportionately get more like negative attention than others. So essentially, items that want you to build your entire rug around them are often the ones that like people pinpoint as being super broken or their numbers are too high. When in reality, it's not, because you have to build your entire build around it. It has to be a very strong item, because if it wasn't, why would you ever dedicate so many resources to making it work? So that's kind of where I wanted to start this discussion, and you guys can chime in here if you have, like, if you agree, if you have any extra thoughts. But that's like where I wanted to start out. And then I have like
Yeah,
more specific
I mean,
thoughts
I do
later.
agree. I wanna start out by saying that it's not like when in terms of what people complain about in the game, I think most powerful is not the most complained about thing. I think most common is more often the most complained about thing. And I think that like what is most common often has to do with like what is accessible to a player who's trying to like copy a build. So like when I think of a build like drum, the way drum works is you find Jabalion drum, you put weapons on your board, you pick like the fastest weapons, and then you play the fastest weapons, and then you put your enchant on drum. And like it's like quite straightforward to play, right? It's accessible, not in the sense that like the card Jabalion drum is accessible in the game. It's actually harder to find in game than 28-hour fitness. It's accessible in the sense that the run is easy to understand what to do, how to play it, how to get a strong version. Anytime. I'm sorry for like
Hmm.
people love motorcycles around my house. Uh it's just it's easy for a player of who doesn't have as much experience with pig or is just trying pig for maybe the first or 10th or 20th time or whatever and not the 500th to get their head around what to do with drum. And so the result is that it's overrepresented, and good versions of it are overrepresented, right? Because when you hit on a build like drum, it's like very like paint by numbers, right? The rest of the what your mission is for the rest of the run. And those types of builds, and like another one would be like Poppy Field is really similar. Um like something like One Weapon Vanessa is really similar. Like you find your direction, and then you kind of just stick with it for the rest of the run. And so they get uh they get a disproportionate amount of hate, I would say, that isn't so connected to how strong they are, as in how consistent taking that line actually gives you 10 wins, but it's more to do with how many ghosts of that line end up on the server.
I will
Yeah,
say I consider kind of the counterpoint to that too, that especially for a game like the Bazaar, I do think that having a lot of variety in your run still ends up being something that's very important. And that means that, in a sense, sometimes it can make more sense to nerf the things that are more prevalent rather than the things that maybe are technically stronger, but because so few people are playing it, it's not really making the meta stale yet. Although it
Yeah,
creates a very complicated balancing act, because it's a very tough judgment for the developers to make of whether or not they need to pre-nerf the thing that they know is really strong but underplayed based on how likely they think it is to become a major issue, if that is the next thing that catches on after they nerf whatever is the kind of most obvious or prevalent thing.
so
ye-
I
go
think
ahead.
a very important factor which often is forgotten is that if a build or an item is very popular, it is popular also for a reason, because people enjoy playing that build, right? Like oftentimes the builds that people don't play are either too weak or they don't enjoy playing them. So I think sometimes it is kind of, how should I put it? You have to counterbalance, is this actually too strong against how fun is this build to play for the people that play it, right? Because in my world, the ideal kind of bazaar would be that I'm doing this super powerful, cool thing for my hero. It feels thematic, it feels powerful, I feel strong. And then my opponent gets to do the same thing for their hero. They do this powerful, cool thing, and then we both battle it out. And it's like exciting because we're both doing things, instead of like my opponent has this powerful thing that's not allowed, so let's get rid of his powerful thing. But then wait, I also have something powerful, so let's get rid of that as well. And then we're both left with super boring and underwhelming builds, and then neither of us are having fun at all. So like in my world, I like to compare it to like a drawing competition, or like imagine like you're in a competition where you're gonna draw a nice picture. So you're trying to draw a super nice like painting or whatever, and your opponent is also doing the same. I would like us both to have like the most amazingly beautiful picture possible, instead of the goal being to be like, I'm going to, burn down your picture and you're gonna like ruin mine, and then whoever has the least like ugly picture by then is like the winner. Like for me, the game is more fun when like items feel powerful and builds are like doing things, as opposed to when items are like comparatively weak and like in a sense more balanced. But I'm curious, like where you guys fall on this scale, because I know that this is a very hot topic in like these kind of communities. Around like where should the power level be, sort of.
I think the biggest thing is that nothing should stay powerful forever. Where I think the comparison falls flat in my eyes, in the sense that something getting nerfed isn't mutually exclusive with something else getting buffed. And historically, throughout the lifespan of the Bazaar, there have been very few, if any. I can't personally think of even a single meta where there hasn't been high-powered builds around, and most of the frustration instead tends to arise whenever things get stale based on something kind of crowding the spotlight for too long. And that's the kind of balance philosophy I advocate for the most, is the idea that everything can be allowed its time in the spotlight, but at the same time, you have to keep things fluid and moving. So anytime something is strong, you should take it down a peg, let something else shine, but there will realistically always be something that takes its place. And the important part in balance is also that we facilitate enabling other strong things to take its place. We can't let all of the supporting cast, all of the small bronze starting or support items, they can't all be terrible, because that's when we would probably risk having a meta where, there's just a very limited span of things you can do that actually feel powerful. But what about you, Snazer? You are the guest after all. You should chime in too.
I think like two things. Like I want to chime in there that like shaking up the matter is pretty good, and I think the part there that fell short is that you also need time after shake up to like develop a new meta, right? Like figuring out what is actually stronger, and sometimes like even kind of late there is like still surprises and changes, because it sometimes takes a little bit of time to develop, and people have to learn, and some play a little bit less and probably need a week longer to figure out how to make something maybe work. So there's this thing. I think like it is partly a subjective topic. From my perspective, I think like there is like a balance, and you don't want to have like a certain type of items, even if they're fun, if they're just like let's say overwhelmingly strong, like Exodia, where you have like, let's say like double, what was it? I don't know the name anymore. The freeze items on the first pick expansion, kind of, right?
Yeah,
Like when you have like double
cold room.
Yeah, cold room. If you had like double cold room, that was like especially in the first iteration, that was like probably like maybe even fun to play for the people who play it, but it was like very obviously a little bit too strong still, and needed to be nerfed, even though it may have been like a little bit fun. On the other hand, I'm still like on the side of Sixten, that it is nice to have like more like fun builds. But then also the question is, what is like fun? Like for Sixten and me, I know it is fun to have like these very fast like builds, like combo-ish builds, whereas other people may disagree and want to have like their big whammy go off, or like their big cutlass slowly a kind of slowish killing opponents. So there is like still like in the end still a subjective there. I agree though with the approach of Sixten general speaking. I prefer like having more like changing matters, and then in those changes though having once in a while like let's say a little bit stronger builds that are fun to play and enjoyable to achieve. And since if you're changing it enough, it's fine. I think that is the better world. But yeah, that's my take there.
Yeah, I should clarify. So what I'm advocating for is to have a diverse and viable of a meta as possible. So like as many different type of builds are strong at the same time, which of course is hard, but like I don't want it to be like one build is so game warping that it suffocates all other strategies. Like you have to play aggro because there is like a certain build that just wins against all kinds of builds. So you have to win in like 4 seconds or the game is over. Um, so like, but at the same time, like I never want it to be where like a certain strategy is not allowed to be strong, or we say like that type of item, whether it be like a charging item or like a looping item or what have you. Like we should never print those, or those kind of strategies
Yeah,
shouldn't be
I
strong.
also hate the hard and fast rules, but can I just jump in and just say react to
Yeah,
something you
for
just
sure.
said? Because I think like you described you want to avoid the meta as warping. So like right now I would say that like the like 28-hour it's not even 28-hour. It's really like sponsored apparel
Yeah.
display case based
And
builds.
sharp
Um
corners just
yeah, and sharp corners.
existing.
More so than 28-hour fitness itself.
Hmm.
They have a warping effect on the meta in the sense that like shield scaling at the speed at which they shield scale makes certain types of strategies not really worth trying. Like so it makes like flat weapon damage strategies like really terrible.
Yeah.
And it also means that like most other types of weapon scaling, with like a few exceptions, like obviously like crude tools, weaponized core could be faster, or like there's some like things like Julian combined with the right setup can be faster. Like there are ways to that exist in the game to scale faster, but in general, it's like how are you supposed to compete with like? And now it's the ice cream truck. I'm so sorry. I don't know if you can hear it. Yeah. So it's like there, like it puts this constraint on the meta where like these types of builds just can't really show up to play. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
flat weapon damage just doesn't show up to play. But it's actually like when you kick the leg out from under that build, like and like of course something about that build is gonna get nerfed or be different or whatever in the next season, like obviously, but like um you can't you can't just assume that everything else is just like is holding steady, right?
Yeah.
You kick the leg out from under that build. Now suddenly a bunch of stuff that 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 build was keeping down is now all of a sudden good. Like maybe like just like big number weapons is just good. And then now that's preying on like this life conduit Mac that we all thought was like OP, but it's like OP in a world of infinite shield scaling, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like it's like a counterpoint to it's almost like a reaction against the pig build, right?
Yeah.
So like once you take out the the constraint, suddenly the world is opening up, and maybe like those max are getting one shot by Langzhans all the time. I'm not saying that that's literally going to happen, but my point is that like you don't need to change much to like knock down the whole tower of cards and just force everyone to start over.
I think,
And
interestingly enough, like Ignition Core Dually right now is the perfect example of the type of build you're talking about, where I think part of what makes it so prevalent is how good it is at preying on not just the shield type pig builds, but also the region-based Mac builds intending to prey on the shield-based pig
yep,
builds. But if pig goes out of the window and we get some form of weapon Vanessa taking the limelight again, right now in the mid game, I would say that I think Dooley has like some of the worst acceleration he's ever had. You can usually solve it towards the late game, especially when you have like a diamond core and crude tools, and if you duplicate Uzis, or there are a bunch of ways of going around that issue. But when you have like especially silver ignition core dually, no defensive layers, like weapon Vanessas would eat you alive. Like you would go from the most consistent I'm always winning the mid game build. This is how we get 3 like 10-0s as a tournament type thing to like I might just lost streak days like 4-7 or something.
yeah,
Um,
but those Vanessas aren't allowed to exist because of like
because of
bad
the
luck or whatever.
Pygmalion,
Yeah,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
So I
and
think
and and
it's very
and maybe the
interesting.
Max will switch over, like as an answer to a Vanessa. Maybe Mac is switching over to like Lifesteal Carpet because that's actually what
Yeah,
smashes.
yeah.
From Mac's point of view, that's what smashes
Mm-hmm.
weapons Vanessa. So like it's so dynamic and
And
like I said,
hard to
I just think
predict.
yeah, yeah, it is hard to predict. So it's cool, and I like figuring like that puzzle of figuring out like what's gonna become good. That's so
Mm-hmm.
fun to me. Like that's the other part of the game that I really love. So yeah,
I
Yeah,
I'm really
so
will.
happy after
also
this tournament where the game is at actually.
I think one great way to balance so what you all have been talking about is how prevalent certain builds are in Metal talked about the
Mm-hmm.
game being stale if one thing is being played all over and
Yeah,
over.
yeah.
I think a nice way to go about it is balancing by rarity. So the
Mm-hmm.
items that are very powerful and like build defining, if you move them up in rarity or what have you, that is one elegant way of still allowing people to play that build when they come across it, but making sure that that is not something you can force every game, right? Um, so I'm much more like advocating for let's keep powerful things in the game, but if they prove to be too forcible, let's move some of the pieces to like a higher rarity to make it harder to get the whole combo together, as opposed to let's remove this from the game entirely because this is problematic or
I will
what have you.
also
Like I'm
say, like, in the defense of the Bazaar developers, I think if you look at the broad picture, especially focusing on archetypes, the amount of things that have taken significant nerfs but remain playable vastly outweigh the amount of things that are just outright unplayable. And I think a lot of the things that have been prime kind of rework targets were more almost the items that were just released too early, like before they'd fully baked in the oven and they realized there's just a better way to do this item. Is at least my impression.
Yeah, and they have
yeah.
nerfed by rarity, like they did to Moose Staff.
Yeah.
So they have utilized that lever in several cases, right? They on Dooley
So yeah,
Shipwreck
too.
I'm
Or
is
more
a very obvious
like
one.
talking about the like I'm not so much like I'm not critiquing the developers, more so like the community side of things, where instead of phrasing it like this item shouldn't be allowed to exist, could instead be like maybe it's too easy to assemble it currently, but it should still be allowed to exist, just in a less forcible form.
Yeah, I think this is
Uh,
like very nitpicky and obviously not directed against anyone specifically, more something that I would advocate anyone who is interested in talking about balance. Like if you genuinely like it's fine. Like let's be honest, some people just want to vent and that's super fair. Like sometimes you're not looking for an actual discussion. You just lost to something. You want to go in the dually chat in the official server, and you want to say, "Oh my god, heavy drums again." That's fair, frankly. Like me, sometimes, I'll be like, "God damn it, lost to this thing." But if we want to engage in an actual discussion about concrete suggestions that we think should be done, the best thing to think about, in my eyes, is to make sure that you properly vocalize why you're advocating for a certain change, and more importantly, if they change this thing that you're advocating for, what do you think will happen? Because there is a lot of nuance to be had. For example, we can look at drum and we can identify multiple things that someone might perceive as the issue. We could feel like the problem is that it buffs all weapons when you use a weapon. Maybe it should only buff individual weapons. We could say the problem is that it grants effectively board-wide haste. Maybe we should tune down the haste. Or we could say the issue is that it gives too much damage. We should look at reducing the damage. Or we could say the issue is that it's too forcible. Maybe we want to hit the rarity. And I think the most important thing is to vocalize why do you want them to change this specific thing, because I think it's so night and day if you just hear someone say they should move drum to gold with like no particular context versus someone saying, I think Jabalian drum conceptually is an item that does a cool thing which I would like to stay, but I think the biggest issue right now is how frequently people can go for it as their primary line, and therefore I would like to have the rarity of it increased. Or just like, that's just a completely random example. I don't even have any strong opinions on drums myself, but I'm always down to advocate for like properly vocalizing and explaining not just what you think should be changed, but why you think that.
Yeah, I agree. Snazer, do you have anything to add on this topic?
I just like wanna snippy say maybe the drum is not the issue, it's the yo-yo and double yo-yo,
Yeah.
right? Like there is like also that consideration with maybe the exception of the amount of slow on the drum itself, but that is just like happening not that often, right? Like sure, it
Yeah, no, it's
happens once in a while, but
very like identifying what is actually the culprit of the issue, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's especially
Yeah, sure.
difficult if you've never played the hero
That's
Yeah.
to know
yeah,
what
I
is
forgot about
making it
this.
strong, or
Or
how
especially like,
being able to gauge how much of a high roll you're up against. Like that's the other part too, is like
how
people
consistent something is.
yeah, like I remember like when I was playing a ton of Poppy Field, like I would people said that my board we had some comment saying that
Yeah,
my board
I
was high
remember. It
roll or
was
whatever.
no,
And
it
it's just
was
like,
in my Mac strategy guide for the first expansion, the experiments one. I had
yeah.
taken some featured example boards that were many of them from your runs, and we got a comment regarding I really like that you've done these example boards, but so many of them use enchanted or non-Mac items, which makes it feel like they would be hard to replicate. Could you please show some boards instead that only use Mac items? Which was such a perfect example of like the misunderstanding of Mac as a character, especially because it was at a point in time where there were even less toys fairly recently after the toy vendor got introduced. So almost any type of Spider Maze Poison Engine build would love to run Yo-Yo. and you had dedicated strategies for keeping certain reagents at certain rarities and then just re-rolling them to make sure that you were hitting duplicate enchanted spider maces with yo-yos on your board.
Yeah, it's like you play a whole run to
Yeah.
achieve these certain desirable outcomes, like multiple spider maces, or having a lot, like, or even just generally like having a ton of fast weapons. Well, on map, the best way to do that is to just keep re-rolling bronze smalls until you get a bunch of spider maces. And the other way to do that is to go to the toy shop because it has a 3-second 50% crit item and yo-yo. So and go to Curio because it has Fang. Like you make the decisions in the game to build the board that you want to build, and you can't separate those things from another. Those are one and the same. You can't disentangle them. So like that. I mean, I don't know exactly how it relates to like whether is drum the problem or yo-yo the problem. This doesn't really speak to that, but just to say that if you don't play the character yourself or never play the
Yeah.
character yourself, it's just hard to gauge like what what is my what the thing that my opponent is doing, how replicable is that,
Yeah.
and how much of it is just like they had some insane high roll, because it's
It was like
people have some whack opinions, I'll
yeah,
just put it that
what
way.
a big part of when Shot Glass Vanessa was at its strongest was when Proboscis was at Curio because it was still bronze.
Yep.
And it was never the strongest item to pair with shot glasses. It still isn't. But it's a very, this is so likely to be good enough that if you ever find Proboscis, you're pretty confident you're getting 10 wins if you have that and a shot glasses. And obviously, shot glasses has seen several nerfs deserved since its heyday as well. But the main idea, right, is that there is a degree of understanding when you queue into all of these Vanessas and you keep losing and you see that shot glasses is making their board go crazy. It's very easy to look at that and be like, it's clearly the shot glasses that is the problem, or Proboscis should be reworked, or what have
Yeah,
you.
but it can be all of those. Like but
It
that's the
can be
thing. It's
all of
like there's
those
no.
things,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
also the fact that maybe what really matters is that the issue isn't that you can get Proboscis on Vanessa, it's that you can get it too reliably or too early, because it's such a big difference if you have flat damage on a conditional trigger on day 12 or on day 3.
And also just like direction reasons, right? Like the sooner you get like an item like Proboscis is
Yeah,
someone of like a build around, like an outlet for a certain type of trigger. The sooner you get that, the more that can inform your shop decisions, that you're going to have to go for shot glasses and go for all these slow items that are going to enable it, because it's a powerful board. So that's the whole reason you want to find it early, because then you just get to make all of the decisions that look at ending up on that final board.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
would just
why
like to add,
yeah, go
and
ahead.
this is something I meant to discuss earlier, but I forgot, is that oftentimes the items that do the killing are the ones that people clamor to be nerfed. So the win condition, the build around item, the item with the red text on it, like that is oftentimes what attracts all the attention. Whereas, for example, on Pygmalion, a lot of the time what actually wins your games for you is your health bar or what you have done in your stash. Like the decisions you made outside of the combat itself is the reason you win, not your Atlaral or your what is it called, the cane, right? Like the reason you
Yeah,
won is
Lions
because you have
King, yeah.
14k health, not because you have a crook on the board, but because the opponent was killed by a crook build. They want crook to be nerfed for the 15th time, when the reason they lost is because the opponent had 5 times more health than them, right? And I think this is something that oftentimes leads to certain items going under the radar, like for example, items that aren't part of the board. So in the case of Pygmalion, Lemonade Stand, or a Signet Ring, or in the case of Dooley, maybe it turns out that in one patch schematics was super broken, but because no one ever saw that on the board, instead people clamored for. I mean, this is hypothetical, but like cybersecurity gets the nerf because that's what people lose to, etc. Like,
I
I
think
think that is
a
something that is very
more
important
like
to.
concrete example for Dooley right now is that with the changes to level ups and the fact that you don't get to improve items' rarities as much, it's made especially machine learning, the Dooley skill that just levels up his core, kind of an extreme high roll because now diamond items are arguably more powerful than they've ever been before, and Dooley's cores get like quadratic scaling because the cooldown goes down, but the number goes up, so it becomes more powerful in two ways at the same time, leading to this kind of very exponential increase in power. So if you just hit that skill on an earlier day, it makes you vastly more powerful, but it's very easy to lose to the ignition core and deduce, alright, it must have been the ignition core that was the problem, not the fact that it was diamond on day 5.
Exactly, that's the perfect example right there.
Yeah, they lost to the skill, but it's like you lost. They think they lost the item, but they lost the skill. And like, yeah, it's definitely an issue. Also, it's just like it's hard to read. Like, it's just hard to read your opponent's board and what it's
For
doing,
sure.
especially if you don't take a lot of time to look and really figure out what's going on. What you probably might have to watch a fight 2 or 3 times
Yeah,
to
for
really
anyone who wants to
understand.
know like what the early days of closed beta was like if you weren't around, we didn't have combat replays. So sometimes when you just like died to something, it just went to the next screen and you were just left
Yeah,
staring
and sometimes you were
blankly,
like,
being
"Was that a
like,
bug?"
"What?
You know what? You
What
yeah. Sometimes you
happened?"
thought it was like a bug.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember some rounds and being like, I literally just don't understand. Like, I couldn't figure it out. So yeah, I do remember that, and the the
It
replays and
felt very
recaps are
beta,
so amazing. Yeah, it's actually like the dark ages trying to thinking back before the recaps and the
Yeah,
replays.
it'd
Like,
be so amazing if we got like in-client run replays, like a match history. I'm sure that will come eventually. That would be so sweet, especially for like, oh, I've had some
I feel like
amazing
they have the
runs.
setup for
Like,
it. It's already like
yeah,
in, isn't it already like on in the
yeah, I
menu
think it is
options and
in
saying like coming
the
soon or
yeah,
whatever?
like where you find the subscription and stuff.
Yeah,
And
I
I've
think it's
had
already
some
in
I've
there.
had some amazing runs just like off stream when I just wasn't recording or anything. And I can't go back and look at them and it's like, no, it would have been so good. So yes,
I just
please,
have
for
one final
Christmas.
note here on this topic, and that is I think having powerful items as well as RNG in the game is healthy because it gives
Yeah.
players the ability to complain about why they lost. So instead of having to admit that they had a bad build or that they aren't super good at the game that day, they can instead target the blame at a certain item being too strong, a certain skill, or I got super unlucky here because of this random nonsense. If we remove all of that and it becomes like chess, I think a lot of people might just stop playing the game at some point because, well, it's nice to have like this comforting knowledge that if that item got nerfed right there, I would have gotten 10 wins here, right? Like if my opponent didn't abuse that OP build, I would have rightfully gotten my 10 wins. So like I think generally from like a game perspective, like a design perspective, it is good for the community to have like villains in the game, right? Like
Hmm.
specific items that can be like the lightning rod for like this is bullshit. I shouldn't lose to this. This is why I lost. And then I don't know. I think that's also like something interesting. Actually, there's like
I
a
will
relationship there.
also say it's something that's oftentimes under talked about is the fact that there's a very direct correlation between variance and skill expression. Not in the sense that it isn't the same thing as how skill based a game is. Because if I talk about how skill based a game is, I'm usually referring to what percentage of the time will the better player win. Where chess is a great example of that. Like, we know how much rating matters in chess because we can see how once the gap between two players' skill levels surpasses a certain threshold, the disparity becomes effectively like 100%. A grandmaster will not lose to players below a certain rating if that is the rating that they belong at or what have you. But skill expression is, I don't think chess is necessarily the most skill expressive game because a lot of it comes from making the correct decision when you can calculate and know the correct decision as the player. Which learning that is definitely a form of skill, but it is interesting how oftentimes the more variables you add, the more exponentially difficult you have made it to simply know what the correct decision is, which creates a very interesting form of skill expression in how well can people pilot a game where they simply cannot humanly calculate the simple, objective, correct move in every scenario? How do some players still have like win rates that are between 80 and 90% in a game with high variance? And that doesn't just go for the Bazaar. You'll see it a lot of the time in auto battlers, in other card games, in all of these high variance genres. To a degree, even in games like StarCraft, where there's fog of war and there's cheese strategies, yet it's still seen as one of the most skill based games of all time because the ability to dynamically react to all of these factors is the skill that is being expressed. And I think that's a really cool thing about the Bazaar. Like, it is such a cool skill expression to determine whether or not you should go for Curio or Relax on a given node, to determine where you should place your enchant when you only have two options. Where that's a great example of, if you just got to pick from all of the enchants, it would be less skill expression because any good player would know what the best enchant is and just pick that every time. So I think that's like the flip side to variance, where if you want to play a game for a very long time, you want it to be interesting from a perspective of streaming and spectating and all of these factors, I think variance based skill expression can be a boon that's rarely spoken of as such.
Yeah, I like to use the term texture, like variance adds
Mm-hmm.
texture to the game.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, like, it's along the lines of what you just said, is that if there's not enough variance, then it ends up that you simply make the same set of
Mm-hmm.
decisions in every run or game or hand, whatever form of game it is. It doesn't really matter. This concept exists kind of independent of that. Um, you end up making the same set of decisions, and you end up, unsurprisingly, with the same set of results. What variance does is give you different subsets of decisions. So there's like the total number of options that exist in the game, and then you encounter a subset of those options, and you have to navigate the subset. But simply knowing what the best option in the abstract is doesn't help you at all, because you're going to encounter a subset of options that very often isn't going to include the very best option, and it's not even going to include the second best option or the third best option. And like, navigating that, it becomes unmemorizable,
Yeah.
unmemorizable, I can't say it, whatever. But you cannot memorize it. So so uh so like, you have to just figure it out as you go and as you play, and like, your brain can do pattern recognition and whatever, but you can't quantify those types of decisions. The curio versus relax decision is like quintessentially the Bazaar.
Yeah.
It's the primary form of tension in the game, right? Investment in your board, investment in your long-term strength versus like a quick burst of power right now. And like that's I can't give you an answer to that question because it's deeply contextual. Not
Yeah.
even just your board, not just your hero, but the patch, but the meta, but your prestige, but everything, right? Like,
Hmm.
and so and that's the point, is that you create a decision that's deeply contextual, that can't be memorized. And that's where and figuring those decisions out and navigating that's the fun of the game. That's playing the game. So I definitely think that like that's why, if you invented a game now that didn't have the 2000 years of history or whatever chess
Yeah.
has, like that was like chess, people would absolutely hate it. So I think that variance is super good. And I to be fair, there is something to like the blaming thing too, like the psychology of gamers. Um
Yeah. I
there's
know
something
I've
to
heard a
that as
lot
well.
of really good game developers like mention that aspect of it, especially for live service games, and I don't think it's a colossal surprise that we've seen such a surge in the popularity of genres like battle royales, which very much
Yeah, I mean, I
play
personally
into
would
that
just blame
aspect.
my jungler. That would be who I
Yes, yes, yes. And I'm the jungler, so I would blame my entire team, obviously.
No, you blame ADC.
No, 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 the whole team. It's when I play support, that's when I blame the ADC.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
I feel
you
like there's a
gotta.
special hatred between junglers and ADCs, though.
These days, it's way more supports than ADCs. It's crazy how the beef has got on.
Interesting. Okay.
But yes, I think that's a pretty good coverage of the topic of the week. In any case, I have some fun boards to show in a bit too. But before that, let's loop it back around a little bit. Do we feel like there's anything else in particular that would be interesting to mention about kind of the current state of the game, the repercussions of the tournament system, just anything while we count down the days for season 5?
Yeah, I think that's the fun part, right? Like we're like kind of excited
Yeah, yeah.
to what Tempo has in store for us for the next season, because like there seem to be like a lot of changes kind of
Mm,
coming. They delayed it, so there has to be something in the working progress, and I'm really looking forward. I feel like though the state of the game at the moment is kind of fine, like it's stale, but I do like actually that there is like a high variety of like in the end builds
yeah,
and heroes. Like you can like play at the absolute top 10, probably at least 3 out of the 4 heroes, right?
yeah.
Like you can play Dually Mac and Pygmalion and um stay in your top 10. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, it definitely feels like pretty much like every new like every these lengthier metas that we've had that were more like stable as of late have been so much more balanced than like I remember personally, anyone who's a long time listener will probably recognize this, but the worst meta the game has ever had in my eyes was when Crook B Pig was extremely prevalent. It was not a fun time to play the ladder because the only good counter to Crook B Pig, this was when Crook buffed all weapons, not just medium weapons. The best counter was to play Pig yourself, but play a HP stacking build of Pig because HP stacking Pig beat Crook B Pig, which Crook B Pig then beat every other hero. So it's just such a limited meta where it was really just which flavor of Pygmalion do you want to play, or are you just gonna hope that you don't roll that many crook boards and at that point in time, the player base was much smaller too. So when this caught on, within like the span of a week or something, I'd go from never having seen the board to facing it in probably 80% of my PvPs.
I think bees is a hard card for it to exist long term.
Yeah, and it was so much worse when it was just like
I know, I
small
know it
silver
was worse before.
caltrops. It was like,
Yeah, and it also like and Crook used to work a different way too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know like those historical pig metas did
Mhm.
seem kind of miserable. I don't
But
know. I mean,
I think
I thought Fixer was kind of miserable.
Mm.
I thought the other one I really didn't like was like the double barrel single weapon meta.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
That one
all
was
I want to
really
say is newer Bazaar players don't know how good they have it. Like it was so much worse,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, it's like and I do think like even Vanessa right now, I haven't been playing her. A big part of that is, and hot take, but Ignition Core Dually is a little bit problematic in its current iteration. They might need to give that one another loop because it's very like the kind of item that, as long as it exists as it is right now, I don't like. It feels like you will always have to pick between, do I want to play tempo on Vanessa or tempo on Dooley? And because Dooley can go for the same consistent line every single run, it becomes almost a little bit binary in terms of, is Ignition Core the best tempo line in the game or not at any given moment? I think that might like become less prevalent with more cores being added, but at least right now, though that's kind of not the main focus. The main point was going to be, I think if you overlook the fact that there isn't that much reason to play Vanessa over something like Dooley currently, I have still heard that plenty of people seem to be having fairly okay success with her as well. And when she feels like the clear like worst board or worst hero, but is still being pretty successful, and everyone agrees that the other three are in quite close contention, it just feels like it says a lot in regards to how balanced the meta is currently.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The between hero balance in the last 2 seasons have been pretty good.
Yeah.
It before that, and I think it was definitely. I mean, like back in beta, it was like there were patches where like only one hero was like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
real choice. So we've come a very long way from. So
And I think it helps a lot just how the like adding Mac into the mix has helped so much. Just because Pig tends to almost always be favored into Vanessa inherently, because having higher base health into a hero where half her items are weapons will always cause troubles for the heroes where half her items are weapons. Um, but Mac, being heavily focused on large applications of status effects, has historically almost always been a real menace for Pygmalion. Um, but because he has low defensive options, he tends to be weak against Vanessa. So they've kind of naturally created this sort of trifecta where obviously there are exceptions, but at all
yeah,
points
and
in
this
time.
is mainly in the early. This is like a early game
Yeah,
rock
yeah.
paper scissor dynamic. We should say because it
Hmm.
changes later on. Pig can become good against Mac, and
Yeah.
this is for the first few days of the game that
But it's still like
this
very
trifecta exists. But that's
much.
super important. That's
Yeah,
super important
yeah.
part of the
And
game.
you
Yeah.
feel how they keep each other in check. And I can only imagine that as Stell and eventually Jules get added into the pool as well, this kind of power balance will grow even broader, where it's just so much harder for a specific character or build to dominate through all stages of the game, because what you will go up against will be so much more varied at all stages.
Yeah, can you imagine Mac trying to regen through Joy, and he's trying to be so like a mad old guy, and he just can't. The food is just too good, and then he just becomes happy and dies.
Yeah.
Like
for anyone who doesn't know,
I am kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah, we don't know for a fact that this will be on Jules when she's released, but at least they have hinted that in a conceptual state, her unique mechanic is something called Joy, which functions where it's a debuff you apply on the opponent, kind of like poison, but instead of dealing flat damage, it doesn't do anything until you have more joy than their max health, at which point they become sated or happy or content or whatever, and you just instantly win the match. Which would obviously have very unique and interesting interactions with, for example, it would probably be very rough into Pawn Shop if you don't have any way of applying it exponentially. But at the same time, it would be incredibly powerful if you look at stuff like Moo Staff, Invulnerability Potion, Memento Mori, or just Regen as a concept. Could all be mechanics that do not work against joy-based builds. But of course,
yeah, in the same way that shields don't work against poison, like, and it adds that it's going to add more texture to those early matchups, right? Where like, especially instead of just having this like straight up rock paper scissors between three, maybe there's a more complex kind of web of counters and considerations. So it could be super interesting if done well, you know.
Yeah. And I think just in general, it's one of those things where I remember a lot of people saying it back when we only had 3 heroes, how much we felt like adding a 4th was going to shake it up. And after Mac got added, that's very much how it's felt, at least to me. And I have no doubt that adding a 5th is going to shake it up even more yet. It also really, like, Snazer brought this up earlier, which I think is one of the most important aspects of a game like the Bazaar, especially from the perspective of a live service title, but it's the discovery time of new builds, where it takes time for people to figure things out. And it turns out that, I don't know if anyone could have seen this coming, but if you split the player base into 5 across 5 different characters, they discover things slower.
Yeah, and also there's a difference between like a build gets discovered, someone copies it, doesn't know why certain cards are chosen or how to replace them or what to do when you don't find X, Y, or Z, and so they put a ghost on the server that's a way weaker version of the build that start, and then so the builds not only are discovered over time, but they also get stronger over time. They become more refined. So it's like, you know, we felt that you can feel it always on the server where like as time passes, people get better and better at playing the meta builds, and like you can feel it. The ghosts get more difficult. So there's that aspect to it as well. It's not just the discovery, but it takes time.
The propagation,
yeah, the propagation takes time, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Any closing thoughts before I move on to the boards of the week, especially from you, Snazer?
No, nothing to add here.
There we go. We actually have some viewer submitted boards this time from Cranberry. He sent this to me via Discord, which is totally okay. You can also submit boards via my Discord server, which is always in the description. Or alternatively, you can also submit them via our business email, which is just abazaarpodcast@gmail.com. And we're always happy to see like viewer suggested boards. If you want to suggest topics of the week, if you want to suggest guests you think we should have on, honestly, like it's kind of anything goes. Like the worst that can happen is that we'll be like, we don't really think so, and then that's about it, right? So no harm, no foul. But we have some silly looking boards here, starting with Pentuple Gumball Perfect Victory.
Okay.
All
right.
So yeah, they got
Not
big,
that much to talk about here.
They got
I
big
mean,
points in my
very
book
nice.
for just the
Nicely
sheer. It's like a aura victory. So
Yeah, it's pure aura. It's
for
pure
any audio only listeners, crucially, we have green gumball, blue gumball, red gumball, blue gumball, green gumball. They are nicely aligned in a deliberate pattern. Style points, crucial, contributes to the aura. Followed by a diamond star chart, deadly Langshan, and diamond silencer.
I'm also going to point out that this is a fake perfect. I'm just putting that out there. 22
Oh
prestige.
yeah, it's like a Arcan
This is a
one.
fake. Yeah, this is a fake perfect.
Walter's got a sharp eye. I like calling them Arcan perfects because I think they still
Okay,
deserve the diamond.
Instead of fake perfects, gotcha. Sorry, Cranberry.
Yeah. No, that's an Arcan perfect. That's kind of even funnier because that makes it cool that they managed to keep winning this past day 10. They also have, I think it's called Rush, the mosquito skill. They have start of combat burn, start of combat freeze, reaction poison with necrophiliac, and a single active item.
He means neophiliac.
Neophiliac. Ah, dude, that's a made-up word. I don't even know what does that word mean actually.
It means someone who loves something new, neo. So you love new stuff.
So I know that it very much isn't the other word, but it's because it has such a scary face for anyone who knows. It's Dr. Vortex big like cloud demon that he rides on always made me initially think of it as some kind of like necromancer skill or something, and it's nestled its way into my brain, but of course it makes way more sense because of Dr. Vortex. It's a person who has a strong preference for or fascination with new things, experiences, or ideas. That makes a lot of things make more sense.
That also ties into the topic of the week in a way.
I'm glad we
Yeah.
clarified
No,
that.
I just need to.
Anyway.
No. So the reason I was quiet for a second is because I have to bring up. Let's see. Can I open the image? We have this. It went big on Reddit for a bit, but it's easy to miss. If you uncrop the art of Dr. Vortex, he's just this little guy in like a soccer on top of the head of this big freaky cloud demon that in turn is on top of the weather vane of his board. So that guy up there is Dr. Vortex, and this is like a Dr. Vortex's monster type situation. So that is the monster that is on the skill. We couldn't go a full day without me
Yeah,
having
butchering
some
one of the
kind
names in the Bazaar.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that was crucial.
That's okay. You're forgiven.
Yeah,
it's
but
tradition on
the
podcast.
main point is he actually has all 5 neophiliac triggers from skills alone. It's haste, poison, freeze, burn. No, it's no slow. Okay, yeah, basically everything bar slow just makes that Langshan go like 100 times as crazy.
Yeah, it gets 3 charges start of combat.
And then when they use an
No.
item, they get poisoned.
Yeah,
and
when
it
they
gets a 4.
yeah, you get poison. It gets a 4. Okay.
And it's
That's cool,
hasted,
board.
and it probably has like a second cooldown.
Yeah.
So I like that. That's a good one. And then the other one was this one, also submitted by Cranberry, which is a I want to say that's a yeah, turbo holsters with turbo firefly, the bolas, the jitte, the Zoarcid, shot glasses, heavy incendiary rounds, a 6x multicast shurikens, the kusarigana, and a obsidian proboscis with radiant rebirth, foreboding winds, and bonk, as well as counterattack, trained, slow and steady, and inexorable.
This one's really disgusting. This one's
It's
really
one of the boards of all time. God help
Counter
you,
Strike
whoever
too.
went up
Actually,
against this.
yeah, this can never lose. This thing's really
It's
disgusting.
it's the type of board to haunt someone's nightmares, I feel.
Yes.
There's
If
also
you see
trained,
that
I
skill
think.
where you want to run away, right? Like
Yeah,
already.
yeah. What were you saying, Sixten?
I think they have trained as well.
Yeah, no,
for
they've
good
both
measure.
trained and slow and steady.
Yeah, this is highly illegal
Yeah,
stuff
and
here.
Shield Bash and Counter Strike. Like, there's actually nothing you can do. There's like, if you try to do something, you if you don't do anything, you lose, and you can't kill them anyway because they have rebirth.
It's
So
a diamond Kusarigana too, next to the obsidian proboscis. Oh, that is a board of all time. I feel like
yeah.
that could go in like that coolest board contest we were. Who was hosting those? Was it
Oh,
someone knows who was?
Sunny did a
It was
coolest
Sunny.
board
Okay, yeah.
competition. Yeah.
I just wanted someone to confirm before I name dropped the wrong person because it would have been a little bit embarrassing. But there we go. Those were the boards of the week. We can move on to socials, starting off with Snazer. Where can people find more of you?
I still have a Twitch channel under Snazer. Feel free to follow there. I may actually stream a little bit once in a while again with the next season. So feel free to go there. I do have a Discord though. It's a little bit inactive there. You probably can go from the Twitch there. And yeah, otherwise I will hang out probably also quite a bit in the Bazaar Discord as well as the big streamer names and sometimes smaller streamer Twitch channels. You will see me in the chat.
And what about you, Sixten?
Yeah, you can find me at twitch.tv/2Sixten. I also have a YouTube channel with the same name and a Discord server. I hope to be back to maybe streaming more this coming fall here with like season 5 and 6. We'll see. Especially with like tournaments, that has me really pumped to be like more active again in the competitive side of the community, because that is kind of where I found my footing in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that covers it.
It is definitely we iterate on this a lot of episodes, but it is very cool too that ranks kind of mean something again as well. A lot of you guys, I think I originally found because both Snazer and Sixten, you were quite highly ranked on Dooley. Back in the
Correct.
day, before rank stopped mattering, and now they matter again. That's pretty cool. Walter, where have you been hanging out? People can, of course,
Well, I
check
mean,
out the Goosefather video. I will try to remember to link it in the description. Goosefather has also been a guest of the show multiple times, but it is the Goose and then Father, but with no E at the end. So Father. Both on Twitch and YouTube. The name of the video in question, I think,
I think
was
it's just the most.
just
I guess I shouldn't say that, but I was gonna say
yeah,
it's the most recent video, but that's actually a
yeah.
terrible
At
thing
the
to put in
time
a
of
podcast.
recording, it's the most recent video, but it is called Tournament Cast featuring Walter Coolest. So it's not that difficult to find. It's your OG Ice Club
Yeah, it's.
avatar.
I honestly really recommend people watch it, and not just me, but just because it's the first ever cast of someone playing the Bazaar. It's just something different. It's a piece of Bazaar content unlike anything that's existed so far. So if you're interested in it, it's really entertaining. He does a great job. I'll plug that instead of saying I'm in the chat or
Yeah,
whatever useless thing I
finally,
normally say. Yeah, I
finally, you
actually
are
have something to
actually
promote.
somewhere. Very cool. This
Uh,
maybe this is the start of the Tournament King Walter arc coming soon.
well, or the start of the Tournament King Snazer arc. He won. Like, what do you mean?
Well, we need to build up a rivalry. It's like tournament champion Snazer versus the up and coming tournament king Walter. You know, rivalry of the
Gotcha.
ages. Pygmalion versus Dooley. It's the rivalry of all rivalries. You know. Something
That is
like
a classic rivalry. The pig versus the robot. It's in all kinds of different literature.
It's true. Since
Yeah,
time immemorial, since the
Walter,
dinosaur ages, it's been pig
you are still
versus
named after a
robot.
Dooley item. Like, I think that is. You might have to change your username at some point,
Oh,
actually.
what if they throw the real curveball though, and they introduce Walter Coolest, which is like a swagged out Walter Cooler, but that is a Pygmalion item.
I mean,
Yeah.
that would be insane.
Yeah, it would be
But
the
also,
old-
like, Pig is my least played character. It's so fake that I've suddenly become like the Pig avatar just because I played him for the last like 2 seasons or whatever, or like not even the whole whatever. The point is,
it's like wrestling. You're playing the heel.
yeah. It's actually fun. I like being the villain. I like
Yeah.
that everyone's Pig. It's very
Mm.
satisfying. I love one-shotting people with Crusher Claw.
Everyone doesn't just hate
look at my
Pig; they all
avatar.
hate you specifically.
Play
You
to
are
crush.
the
Play to crush. I'm in my fort. I'm chopping their heads off with my
yeah.
claw. It's awesome.
No, it's good. It's good. It adds texture to the podcast. So.
Yes, I'm adding texture to my opponent's board. by
No,
chopping
but
their
it's
heads off.
adding a lot of textiles to your board.
Yes, I'm a textiles fan. I mean, if you watch the video, you'll see how absolutely cracked textiles is. Textiles.
That's
is
a scary item.
It's
especially
Is
if-
this segment
key.
ever ending, guys? Are we stuck in socials?
No, yeah, this is. I mean, this is like the most.
That's why it's called
fun part,
socials. We're
honestly,
talking to each
yeah,
other. We're
being
socializing.
social.
Yeah.
True.
No, we gotta. It's just we gotta prop up the Walter Coolest villain arc. It's crucial. But we do actually only have one person left. Admittedly, it is me. I haven't been streaming a ton. You will find me at twitch.tv/MetallFenix, 2 L's and an F. Same name is on the screen, in the description. I probably do intend to stream more as well. I'm also kind of psyched up for the tournament stuff. I probably would have streamed it if I was home yesterday, but I was not. But there's definitely more of those coming, so that'll be a perfect thing to just boot up a stream for a bit for. But I also have a YouTube channel by the same name, and my latest video is actually a dually strategy guide that features the core carry strategy, which is what Snazer and all of the top dually players have been playing the most as of late. So if you want to find out kind of a more detailed description of that playstyle, check out that video, I guess. I've got some more things brewing that, depending on by manner of time, may or may not come out. No promises. They drop when they drop, simply. But leave me a subscription there. I am so close to 1,000, which would be very cool. I think that covers it for me. So thanks a lot to everyone who's been watching. We'll have another guest next week, same as always. You'll be able to find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or via RSS feed for your podcast listening app of choice. And I hope that whoever you are, wherever you are, you have a wonderful morning, day, evening, or night. And perhaps we'll see you in the next one.